For the last few years, Chi-Fi has dominated the mini amp category. Fozzy Audio, IEMA, Duke Audio, and Fozzy Audio again. SMSL, Topping, Duke, IEMA, Fozzy Audio, all have been making super affordable, good sounding amps. Well, guess what? RSL said, hold my cup of coffee. Introducing their $110 integrated 255.1. $110. So sit down, grab a cup of coffee, and let's talk about if there's big trouble in Little China. You may know RSL as making some awesome subwoofers. The Speedwoofer, they have a 10-inch and they have a 12-inch version, both of which I have here in the house. And I have fallen in love with the 12-inch. I like the 10-inch too. I thought it was awesome, but the 12-inch is huge. I never thought I'd like a huge subwoofer, and I like a huge subwoofer. It's in my living room. It's super simple to use. It sounds awesome, and it really increases the space, the sound system. It makes my little bookshelf speakers sound like towers. It's awesome. So when RSL asked me if I'd be interested in listening to their little mini amplifier, I was, of course, over the moon, because there has never been a real option for a Class D mini amp at $110 from a US-based company before. I could be wrong. If I'm wrong, put it in the comments. You probably would do that anyway. Super excited. I was also a little bit nervous. Is this going to sound as good as the Fozzy Audios? Because Fozzy has come a long way with the BT20A Pro, with the V3 especially. You can get an A07 from IEMA and upgrade the op amps. There are a lot of awesome options from China. But there's one thing, even if this sounded mediocre, which I'm not saying it does, but even if this sounded mediocre, there's one thing that RSL has that none of the other companies have, and that's customer service here in the United States. Specifications, all right, power, 55 watts, RMS, into 4 ohms at less than 1% THD. I talked to them because they didn't have an 8 ohm rating listed. They told me 28 watts into 8 ohm loads at less than 1% THD. 106 dB signal to noise ratio. Channel separation of 100 dB. 92% efficient. Bass and treble tone controls. Plus or minus 9 dB at 100 hertz, which is great. Plus or minus 9 dB at 5,000 hertz. A minuscule 5.5 inches by 1.5 inches by 5 inches deep. 0.87 pounds. 2-year warranty. 2-year warranty. 2-year warranty. People just say, hey, this has a 2-year warranty. But guess what? It's a little bit easier if anything does go wrong with this to pick up the phone and talk to somebody at RSL. This thing also does things a little bit differently. You have a USB, and that USB just isn't for some thumb drive you stick in there. You can also hook your computer right up to that USB and play music through this. It's a DAC of sorts. However, I wasn't able to figure out exactly what DAC it is, so I'm gonna have to ask them about that. But it works because I was playing Tidal through this, through a USB connection. They were also a little bit hesitant to talk about the chipset that is in here, so I think more will be revealed later. Does that matter? Not really. Also comes with Bluetooth. On the front, you have a selectable toggle, either line in, Bluetooth, or USB in. And as discussed before, you have your volume knob, bass, treble. It does really start to kick in around the noon position. As soon as you hit noon, it really starts to crank up. You're gonna have to turn this a little bit if you want to get max power out of it. On the back, this is where things get a little bit more interesting. So not only do you have a USB input, not only do you have a Bluetooth input, but there's a little toggle on the back. And that toggle is a high-pass filter. Fixed at 90 hertz, it can either be on or it can be off. Now the reason why this is so interesting, because in my use case scenario, this has been in the living room hooked up to the Schiit-Sin. The Schiit-Sin is basically an analog home theater processor. Not really a processor, but a preamp of sorts. There is no high-pass filtering on the Schiit-Sin. There's high-pass filtering on this, which means if you have smaller speakers, something like an RSL speaker, you can put a high-pass filter on it. at 90 hertz. And then you can turn it off if you don't want it. That may not seem like a big deal, but it's kind of a big deal, especially if you're running a 2.1 system, especially if you have small speakers, especially if you want to get the most out of those small speakers. By turning the high pass filter on, down there to 90, your small bookshelf speakers are no longer trying to reproduce a whole bunch of bass and smearing up the mid-range. You're blocking all those low frequencies that you don't want going to your speakers. And then your subwoofer can do its thing when you set it around 90 hertz. Did I mention this is $110? Did I mention this is from RSL, which is in the United States? $110. Power supply, 24 volt times, I think 7.2 or something. Comes out to about 150 watts for the power supply. It also has a sub/preamp out, 3.5 millimeters. So you're going to have to get a 3.5 to RCA unless the subwoofer or something else has a 3.5 millimeter input. No big deal. Then you have your binding posts. Binding posts a little bit tight, so if you have big banana clips, you may bump into each other. I use the Amazon Basics banana clips, and they work perfectly in here. Bear in mind, though, tight on the real estate back there. Been in the living room. Currently, it's running the RSL CG23Ms. That is a 4 ohm speaker with a sensitivity of 89 dB. So, kind of perfect for this. Also ran the CG3M from RSL. That is a 4 ohm speaker at 86.5 dB sensitivity. Also ran the Q Acoustics 5020. Also ran in here in the office under my scrutinizing evaluation, the ELAC BS41s. Another somewhat hard to drive speaker. When I first started listening to it in here, hooked the computer, which is a Mac Studio, hooked that up directly to here, the ia255.1 via USB, and I turned it on. I'm like, ugh, sounds a little thin. I'm like thinking to myself, okay, sounds a little thin, but still, that sounds a lot like, I don't know, some of the 12070 chipset amps from China. And then it occurred to me, oh, wait a minute, you've had it in the living room. You also have a 90 hertz high pass filter on it. So I slipped my hand back behind and I went like this, and oh boy, the bass came back. I did not do a direct comparison with anything. That video is coming up. So if you are new here and you want to hear what the RSL sounds like compared to the best Class D amplifiers out of China, please subscribe. Please like this video too. In isolation, this has punchy bass, clean highs, clear mid-range. It is a perfect small amplifier with the added benefit of it being $110, having USB, having Bluetooth, and being based in the US. Even if this thing was $200, I would still be singing its praises because it's based in the US, has USB, has Bluetooth, and a high pass filter, which none of the other Chinese competition has. Two things that this amplifier does not sound like. It does not sound thin, and it does not sound harsh on top. It sounds more natural. As natural as some of the 3255 chipset amps? I don't know yet, because I haven't spent a ton of time A/Bing them. But as it is in isolation, this thing gives me everything I need. If anything, with the ELACs, it was a bit too much on the bottom end. That speaker does have a lot of bass though. So here in the office, I actually had to back the bass back down a little bit. However, with the RSL CG3M or its bigger brother, that's going to be perfect because that speaker needs a little bit of help on the bottom. Makes sense that this amplifier would pair very well with the RSL speakers. 100% recommendation. This is a contender for Amplifier of the Year. I've already said it probably a dozen times. At $110, you get an amplifier that sounds great, has usable power, functionality that other amplifiers at its same price from China doesn't have, with a high pass filter, with a USB input. It has Bluetooth, but a lot of them have Bluetooth. Also has tone controls. This is perfect for a skit sin. Perfect for a skit sin with the high pass filter. This thing actually, the color scheme is perfectly matched almost to the skit sin that I have. Black chassis, silver knobs. But this is no slouch for music. Amazing, amazing. Maybe short on power a little bit for some people. For me, I did not have an issue. It drove the ELACs to their limits, basically. Cannot tell you how excited I am about this. I will put the link in the description. That is not an affiliate link, and RSL did not sponsor this video. They didn't tell me what to say in this video at all. I didn't even ask. The only thing I asked them was for specs. If you need a small amplifier, if you need an amplifier that you want to put a high-pass filter on, I don't know how China is going to be able to compete against this. It's $110. It's $110. It's $110. Not quite sure how they did it. But that is what happens when you have talented engineers designing something. Now, it's made in China, okay? Fine. Most of the big companies, Cambridge, Marantz, Pioneer, even Emotiva, the Basics line, they are made in China. SVS, made in China. But they're designed here in the U.S. and they're supported here in the U.S. And that is the real key thing. Chances are you're never going to have any problems with this. But if you do, you just have to pick up the phone, call over to California, and I'm sure they're going to help you out. Amazing. I'm gushing. I'm so excited. I'm so excited because I recommend a lot of the Chi-Fi amplifiers because they're cheap, and some of them sound really great. I get the same criticism, though. I don't want to buy Chinese stuff. I don't want to buy Chi-Fi stuff. I get it. Now there is an option, and that option sounds good. And it's not that much more expensive. Actually, it's cheaper. This is cheaper than the T9 from IEMA. Cheaper. It doesn't have all the functionality, but it has most of the functionality and more functionality with a high-pass filter. Amazing. Amazing. I got nothing else to say. So if you want to support the channel, you can sign up for Patreon. Patreon.com/cheapaudioman every Sunday night. We have Patreon-only Zooms, Patreon-only Discord, Patreon-only Facebook group. You can also use the links in the description. Most of those are affiliate links, except for this one. If you click and you buy, I do get a commission, but it doesn't cost you any more, so it's a great way to support the channel. You can also sign up for Amazon Music, Tidal, or Roon. Links in the description. Click sign up. They have a trial period. Even if you quit, though, I get a couple of dollars. You can also buy me a cup of coffee. Down at the bottom of the video, there's a thanks button. Put a little bit of money in the tip jar. But don't feel compelled to buy me anything. So don't binge watch anything on Netflix or Hulu. Get yourself a new RSL 255.1 integrated amplifier and fill your soul with happiness. And with that, I am Randy. I'm the Cheap Audio Man.